Chaps, I've got Alex. It is Alex, isn't it?
It's Alex, yeah.
That's one. So we're completely brain dead there. Alex, are you still working or?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm doing now, Dan, I retrained as a mental, I mean, I'm nearly 65 now. I retrained as a mental health nurse when I was 48. I was running a business at the time and I was very stressed out, myself. And I was lucky enough to be able to be in a position where I could pack it all in. And I became a mental health nurse, qualified just before my 51st birthday. And so then I worked in acute psychiatry for 18 months. And then during that time, I got involved with lots of military. We opened up a unit for serving personnel that were serving over in Afghanistan. So we opened up a unit there. And then I went off to combat stress for 5 years. And I worked as, we were the first two outreach workers for combat stress. So I did that for 5 years. During that 5 years, I trained as I was an accredited EMDR trauma therapist. So then I went from there, I went to the Ministry of Defence and worked with serving personnel for 5 years. And then when COVID broke out 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, whenever it was, I decided to leave the MOD, went back to the NHS to work with the elderly in the community. So I did that throughout the pandemic. So now I gave up my nursing registration in March last year, came up to Scotland, live in the wilds of Scotland here, back to my home territory after 40 odd years, me and my dog here. And I now work for a registered charity up here, a mental health charity, and we are the distress brief intervention team. So in other words, if someone is picked up by the ambulance service, presents to A&E or the police or goes to their GP in acute distress, we pick them up within 24 hours, see them for 2 weeks, and then off they go, which was a daunting prospect because I'd been used to dealing with people for over a year. And I thought, well, what can you do within 2 weeks? But I've discovered that there's a hell of a lot you can do in 3 or 4 sessions, to give people tools and strategies to take forward to deal with anxiety and all the sort of things that you and I potentially suffer with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Can I just say, so if you've dealt with the more traumatic side of mental health, as in these people are in a serious situation?
The full gamut. No, I mean, the thing is, I mean, it was interesting because when I was with combat stress, the popular, the public might just think it's all people with PTSD. It's incredibly rare, PTSD. A lot of people think they've got PTSD, but they don't. Yeah. They've got symptoms of post-traumatic stress, maybe, or stress or anxiety. But post-traumatic stress disorder as an actual disorder is quite rare. And, and it's equally, I mean, there's as many people in civilian life suffer with PTSD as military veterans. So it's exactly the same. No, I've dealt with just normal stuff, worried well as well, so the full gamut really.
Yeah, because I think that the context behind that, after some of the conversation I have via MANUP or even face to face, is most blokes won't speak to their doctor or anybody because they feel they're going to get shipped off to the funny farm, as they say.
Yeah.
Actually, I've seen some cases where I'm like, that person, I'm not qualified at all. I'm not claiming to be. This is just my opinion for what it's worth. There has been sometimes where I'm like, that person needs to be sectioned.
Mm-hmm.
And that hasn't happened. They've managed to sort it in the doctors
Yeah, usually the only reason you would get sectioned would be if you were a serious risk to yourself or someone else. And in other words, if you were actively suicidal and had made an actual plan. But very often people will present in acute distress and they'll have what we would call suicidal ideation, which is suicidal thoughts. And, most people, if they've got, throughout their life, if they've gone through a divorce or whatever, may well sort of think, look, if I was driving along, if I suddenly went like that, all my problems would go away. There's a very big difference between that, which is a fairly normal reaction to abnormal events, and actually having a distinctive plan. So, I think a lot of our job is normalizing things, being able to say to people, look, if that and that happened back then, well, why wouldn't you feel like this? That's okay.
Yeah.
But by the way, stop doing that because your wife will walk out on you. You know, so you know, I mean, it's normalizing it. We all get stressed, we all get anxious.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. I mean, men in general, we're pre-programmed, aren't we? Really, you know, from an early age, you know, big boys don't cry, all that kind of stuff. We're almost told to kind of like suppress, you know, feelings of sadness or being frightened or whatever. We're almost told we can't have that feeling.
Yeah. No,
so, you know, it's in our kind of DNA, really.
Yeah. Do you think we've kind of, I don't want to put your pigeonhole you, so I apologise, but what I think one of the foundations of MANUP is, I think it's breaking that stigma where the conversation doesn't always need to be about, oh, I'm depressed, I'm anxious. Actually, just say, I'm feeling shit.
Yeah.
And
No, absolutely. The thing, no, you're dead right, because the thing that I noticed most about men over my sort of like career, the last 15, 20 years, whatever, is that they don't really know what they're feeling.
That's a valid point. Yeah.
They just know they're feeling shit. And, you know, and quite often they will present as I'm depressed, and you'll actually find out they're just really angry about something that's happened, and it kind of presents as a, so they don't really know, which goes back to what I said earlier. You know, if you're told from an early age to, you know, suppress feelings of sadness or, you know, being really frightened or whatever, you know, then, you know, very often the default emotion that men go to is anger, because they don't really understand any other, they're not really in touch with the other emotions. It's interesting if you ask somebody. I used to deal with a lot of kind of soldiers, and you know, you would ask them what happened when you were young. If you know you fell off your bike and scraped your knee, or you get in a fight or something and you were crying and you ran back, what would happen? And usually it was either you get beaten around the head or told not to cry or whatever. Yeah. So you know that has an impact on you, doesn't it? You know, if you know, so a lot of things go back to the childhood, unfortunately. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, men in general, you know, we struggle with that kind of thing.
No, absolutely. So throughout your 15, 20 odd career, have you seen like a pattern where you think, do you know what, if they would have spoken about whatever 10 years ago, because I think when I'm going this way, a lot of people, and it frustrates me so much, and I've been in this game long enough now, or 3 years of this charity, I should know better, but it still pisses me off. And we keep pigeonholing mental health with mental illness. Mm-hmm. They're two totally and utterly different things. One can escalate the other without question. Is there like a pattern in the amount of people you've dealt with? Like, you must have it where you think, well, if you'd have spoken to someone 3 years ago, this bit could have been prevented. I don't want to sound like an art. I don't mean that how that sounds. Actually, I do mean that how that sounds.
No, but definitely that's why, you know, I mean, a lot of what we do is kind of, as I said, normalizing things. Well, you know, if that's happened, then you're going to feel like this. Yeah, I mean, I think the trouble nowadays really is you've got all the, I mean, there's all sort of social media in general. You know, there's all this talk about toxic masculinity, and you know, there's the whole kind of like movement with Jordan Peterson and things like that. So I think men have, you know, they're a bit confused as well these days. I mean, I think more so than ever. They don't really know where they sort of fit into the whole, the whole thing. So, but yeah, I think that there should be much more emphasis on keeping mentally well before you break down, and that's what I mean. You know, we all try and do. We try and give people strategies.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of that is just psychoeducation. About, I mean, I know you don't like to hear things about anxiety and stress, but you know, we all, I mean, having anxiety, people think that's a mental health problem now. It's just you're anxious. You know, it's a normal.
Yeah.
It's a normal emotion. But the thing is, if you get really anxious, you know, it can have a really, you know, living with constant stress can have a really detrimental effect on your mental and physical health, and loneliness as well. You know, I think the trouble is when men start to have problems, they tend to isolate themselves. Yeah. And I know, and I'm, you know, I would completely agree with it's great to talk to your mates, but sometimes if you're having a real problem, your mates aren't the best people sometimes to talk to, because they'll tell you what you want to hear, really. Sometimes you have to talk to, if it's developing into something that's having an impact in your life, it's best to talk to someone else, who's maybe not involved, who can sort of say, well, look, I think you need to sort of start doing ABC and stop doing XY. So I've lost my train of thought there.
Yeah, no, I was wondering, is he stopping or keep going? So I didn't want to interrupt. So I apologize. So I think that's the thing, though, isn't it? Because when I've spoken to people, and I've been there before, I have been there many times, and I still do it. When something's not right, I'm like, okay, well, Mrs. ain't going to understand. No one's going to understand. And I think I need to actually go to a doctor. But the second I think of a doctor, I'm like, all they're going to do is pump me up with drugs and kick me out.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I'm starting to see a trend where that's not always the case now.
No, it's pretty hard to get to see a doctor these days. But he's unlikely to actually say that. Unfortunately, if GPs have got very little time and they've got a very blunt instrument, they look at you and they think, is this person depressed or has an anxiety disorder? And if that's the case, then it's medication, and if you're very lucky, a short course of CBT through the IAP service. But again, it's a difficult one, really, because I get lots of people coming to me who are just worried. Well, they think they've got a mental health problem, but they're just actually they're just stressed and anxious, and there's nothing needs to be done. But I mean, it's knowing when that is actually becoming something else. That's the.
Is there any tips? I've not thought about it like that, because I think I do get frustrated, probably because the amount of stuff I get tagged in via my personal pages and even by MANUP is just absolutely crazy. And LinkedIn actually for me is the worst one. They're like, oh, my mental health. It's like, what's wrong with your mental health? Like, I've just started a new job. It's like, we just anxious. Obviously, I wouldn't say that, but you read about it, about how they're struggling with the men. It's like, you've just started a new job. You're under loads of stress. That's not necessarily.
It's not at all. I mean, that's just being human. I mean, the trouble is, I think that you need, going back to this whole business about men, don't cry, boys don't cry and stuff like that. You've now got helicopter parents that hover over their parents and, try to keep them safe. They can't take any risk at all. We need to be somewhere in the middle. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of, I think people are more aware of what is a mental health condition and what is just an ordinary, there's all these mental health awareness things that are out there now. So they're trying to make it more accessible for people, but I'm not altogether sure that, I mean,
that's something where you can get me piping up big time. So I'm not gonna.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been in one myself, and it's it's great as far as it goes, but all it does is sort of tell you the kind of things that people can suffer with. They don't actually tell you what to do with it. I mean, I know that you probably, I mean, I'm getting the idea that, I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there about mindfulness and all the rest of it. These things really, I mean, having a way of self-soothing, calming things down is great, and I'm a big advocate of that. Whether you want to call it, just sitting down, relaxing, and getting into some nice, soothing, rhythmic breathing techniques, or you want to call it, meditate, it doesn't really matter.
Oh, don't say meditation.
I know, no, I get it. The trouble is, meditations, particularly mindfulness and meditations become a bit of an industry now, and it's a bit of a everyone's at it. But I mean, it does have its place, having a place that you can go to that you can calm down. But talking to your mates is great, and being socially connected. I mean, loneliness and having a meaning in life, having purpose in life. That's one of the big things. I noticed that during lockdown with the elderly. People just lost their mojo.
Yeah.
There's nothing to get up for, and a lot of guys, you need to have meaning and purpose in your life. there's a great book, Viktor Frankl. He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. He was an Austrian a Jew who went to Auschwitz, and he was a neuroscientist and psychiatrist, and he came out and he wrote this book. And the reason he survived and he lost all his family was because every day he could find something that gave him meaning and purpose. Yeah. And I think we'll have to find that as well, you know, as blokes.
Is there any tricks to that? I know that it can never ever be a one size fits all, but just for your experience, is there anything what you think most people might be missing? Because I do think with mental health, I think we've just overcomplicated everything. Everything's got to be about labels. I think you said this on the phone the other day, because when you brought up meditation, I remember thinking, oh, here we go. Actually, you said actually meditation is just stopping, or I don't want to misquote you, but
no. I mean, if just really, I mean, there's different types of meditation, but I mean, mindfulness meditation, what I find it helpful for is it allows you to kind of, you know, be more aware of what's going on up here and actually in your body. And the more you're aware of what you're actually thinking, you've got an opportunity then to get a little bit of distance between you. Because a lot of people just, they wake up in the morning and they've got a thought, you know, a thought, I'm a failure, whatever the thought is, and that thought hooks them. And that's the lens that they see everything for the rest of the day. But, you know, it's going to sound a wee bit kind of psychobabbly here, but the more that you just, you're aware of that you've got these random thoughts all day long, you can actually start to kind of like distance yourself by, well, I can see myself, I'm having the thought that I am, whatever it is, rather than I am.
Yeah.
That's getting into, I'm probably going to lose you there. But I think that being able to sort of find a place that you can, you know, that you can go, just a calm place, you know, and that can just be, what I do is I send, when you talk about breathing techniques and meditation or whatever, I send people links from YouTube, you know, because they're quite entertaining. Yeah, and there's a great guy called Dan Harris who wrote a book called 10% Happier, and he had a massive panic attack on air. He was a news anchor in America, but and then he went on a journey and he became a kind of almost traveling evangelist for mindfulness meditation. But he just talks like you and me. He talks in normal terms. He's not a Buddhist. He's not, you know, he's not got any robes on. There's no psychobabble. It's just about noticing your mind's wandered back to the breath, noticing your mind's wandered back, and the science behind it. The science behind, you know, far cleverer people than I am. You know, the people have been putting brain scans, etc. The science that says that it does start to kind of calm down areas of the brain, you know, that, you know, connected with ego and all sorts of things. And just rhythmic breathing helps with anxiety because it has an effect on your heart rate variability that sends a message to kind of calm everything down. So these things really, really work. And also, I mean, it's going to sound really sort of pink and fluffy here, but you know, developing self-compassion, you know, noticing your own struggle. And it's really, I mean, when I think back on the guys that I dealt with who were kind of, you know, roughy tufty guys, you know, when I look back and think, well, what were the things that made the biggest difference to these guys' lives? It was always the kind of pink and fluffy stuff. It was all developing self-compassion, you know, sort of like learning just to kind of like, you know, sort of like, you know, relax and, you know, and having a good look at their life, what's important, where do they want to be, what do they want their life to be all about, and trying to sort of think, well, that's my sort of value, what's going to kind of get me there. It's just, you know, being able to, you know, talk to people and let them just make sense of their life.
Absolutely. So if you don't mind me asking that, like, you don't seem the kind of guy with candles in a circle with robes on and going
No.
So you seem like my kind of bloke. How do you meditate?
I've got a wee chair there. I mean, well, anywhere. You can do it sitting in the toilet. Anywhere. I mean, all you do. I mean, meditating. I mean, the biggest. Call it whatever you want. All it is you. It's about, you know, noticing what's actually going on in your head and your body. So to meditate, all you do is you just anchor in something, which is usually your breath, because it's there all the time. It could be anything else. It could be sound or whatever. So you anchor in the breath, your mind wanders. I've been doing this for 10 or 12 years, and every second, my mind's away. That's fine. That's the whole point, is to notice that your mind's wandered, and then you just repeat it. It's that repetitive thing coming back to the breath all the time. You can't empty. I mean, people usually say, well, I can't do it because I can't empty my mind. Nobody can. I mean, I think that's, the Buddhists would talk about, self-actualization or whatever. I'm not sure, but that's, nobody can get to there at all. I mean, it can have a really, really relaxing effect on you, but more than anything, it can actually allow you to explore what's going on inside. I mean, I used to have guys in the room that would be incredibly, incredibly distressed and anxious, because they had PTSD. Yeah. And you would ask them, what are you feeling? Well, I feel anxious. And say, well, no, what are you feeling? And they, what do you mean? They didn't know what they're feeling. I say, well, can we just sit for a minute? And then you would get them, guys, you just sit there and get them to get into nice breathing patterns. Say, well, just describe this thing that you're calling anxiety. What does it feel? Where do you feel it in your body? I feel it up here. What does it feel like? Is it got a color? Does it move? Well, it feels like a steel band around my throat. Oh, okay. And other times it's like a load of worms in my stomach. So, okay, so this is what happens when your brain detects a threat. This is how it manifests itself, this thing that you're calling anxiety. Okay, can you just allow that to be there? Can we just breathe in around a bit and just allow it to be there? It sounds all kind of like, weird, but I mean, the more you're willing to have that thing, the less power it has. The trouble is, when people get anxious or stressed, if they get really anxious, oh, this is really dangerous. I've got to get rid of this. And they get in a struggle with it. And it usually means some form of avoidance. So people's lives shrink. They stop going, I'm not going to go there because I'm going to get anxious. So I won't go. I'll just sit in here because this is my comfort zone, sitting here with my bottle of cider beside me. Yeah. Really? There's a big world out there, there's a lot happening. Are you able to maybe open up to some, what I would call clean discomfort, to go out there and engage with people and carry that around with you? You can carry around anxiety, it's fine. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the thing, because I'm diagnosed with high function BPD.
Okay.
To be honest, I'll be honest with you, it doesn't bother my life that much now. Because I think I've just got it in my head that I'm just like, do you know what? I'm probably never 100% going to get rid of it. So I've just had to live my life with it. And this is exactly the same like the depression as well. The depression's the one, if I had to have a choice of having high function depressive or BPD, I'd keep the BPD any day, because sometimes I can use it as a tool. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The depression stuff, I wish that would piss off. I really would. I mean, again, I've had to learn that actually, rather than mope about it, I don't want to sound like I've got no choice but to get on with it and use that's part of my life. It's not my life. Yeah, I mean, the thing is it really helpful giving somebody a kind of like personality disorder. You know what I mean? It's lovely, yeah. Especially when they tell you and then kick you out. It's crazy. I mean, the thing is, we all. I mean, what is a normal personality anyway? We're all kind of like we're all on the spectrum somewhere, aren't we? Yeah, absolutely. And we're all in it together, so we really should be kind of like helping each other. And one of the best ways is to kind of like normalize things. Yeah, that's okay. And as I said, I mean, often the most helpful thing when you're having a kind of face-to-face with somebody is that just being able to point out that if all that kind of stuff's happened there, then you're going to feel like that. But what you're doing with that, and again, that's when it, quite often men, as I said earlier, they're angry. They get. I mean, if people are going through a relationship breakdown, quite often, the partner's trying to sort of like talk things through, and the bloke just wants it to go away, and doesn't really understand what he wants to say anyway. So he just gets angry, and then so often what I would do with people is give them strategies to actually resolve conflict with the other halves or whatever. And there's really easy ways of doing that as well. There's a thing called non-violent communication, which is another
But it's great. It's great. It's just a simple 4-stage process that works really, really well to resolve conflict. So there's little tools you can give people. But, you know, that thing, going back to that self-compassion, that's really, really important as well. And in very simplistic terms, if whatever you're suffering with, if you had someone that you loved or cared for very much that was going through exactly the same thing, what would your advice to them be? And you would be compassionate, you'd be empathetic, you would talk in a nice kind of calm way. But we do the opposite to ourselves. We beat ourselves up. We give ourselves a real hard time. Why am I like this? Why am I like this? And the thing is, as soon as your little voice in your head, that inner critic does that, that keeps you in that sympathetic nervous system response. It keeps you in your anxiety state. So, you know, being able to sort of, like, you know, turn towards yourself with, and again, there's really, really interesting things on YouTube, which is a great place. It's full of a load of crap as well, but there's some fantastic things in YouTube that kind of encourage people. Oh yeah, I like the idea of that. I'm going to look into it more. And then you just give them exercises to I mean, it's a tough sell, you know, developing self-compassion to a guy that's been out in Afghanistan, for instance. But, you know, once you gain that, it's great. We all need it.
Yeah.
The trouble is, a lot of these guys didn't have any compassion when they were growing up, or the person that was supposedly giving them compassion was actually abusing them. So you've got to be careful, because it can be a threat as well. So, but.
Well, so I think social media doesn't help, doesn't it? Because according to social media, we should all be perfect.
Social media is terrible. I mean, the thing is, you know, you go in there and absolutely everybody's having these wonderful lives. And, you know, I very often recommend, there's a great little book called The Happiness Trap by Russ Harris. And the reason it's called The Happiness Trap is because it's not our natural state as Homo sapiens, human beings, to be happy. If our natural state was being happy, we'd be extinct here, we would have been eaten. So our natural state is to problem solve, look for danger, survival. So, and that's how we're kind of hardwired. So, you know, that's what's kept us safe. So we do have a tendency to kind of, you know, look in the worst case scenario, because it kind of, you know, in some ways keeps us safe. I mean, happiness comes along and it's a night out with your mates or your girlfriend or your wife or whatever. It just comes along in moments. The rest of life is up and down, humdrum, you know, it's a whole, so.
No, absolutely. So just before we draw to a close then, if somebody's watching this, they're triggered, whatever fancy buzzwords we want to use, that if someone's watching this going, oh, actually, I can relate to that, what would you tell them to do?
I would tell them to not be dismissive of sitting in an armchair and anchoring in something and spending 5 or 10 minutes a day, just best to just look into it. But that I would look into the whole concept of developing self-compassion. I would try and get an idea of what they want their life to be all about. I used to give people, there was a values questionnaire, which is just 10 areas of your life. And what you would look for is, and it would just be dead simple, it would be something like social life, you know, how happy are you with this area of your life? Not at all, reasonably and very happy. And how satisfied are you with this area of your life? Not at all. And you would look for something that was really important in their life, but they're really dissatisfied with. And you think, well, there's a bit of work to be done there. You know, why aren't you socializing? You know, what's actually going on there? And so just finding what they want their life to be all about. And also, you know, yes, reaching out to your mates, but being aware that, as I said earlier, your mates will have a tendency just to want you to feel better. And, you know, so if you do think that there's no shame, and, you know, we all go through times where we can feel absolutely desperate, and, you know, we can feel suicidal. It doesn't mean to say we're going to do it, but I mean, we can feel that desperate. You know, I mean, anyone who's going through a big relationship breakdown or lost their job or, you know, lost somebody. I mean, these things can, it's trauma, it's traumatic. So, you know, try and talk to some, there's no end of helplines out there. No, you know, like your own, where people will be able to just normalize that and say, that's okay, mate, you know, that's, you're all right, you know, you're going to be okay, but I think, you know, you might need to sort of look at doing this. Yeah, just educate yourself about what again, going back to these little, the great app, fantastic app. If you just want I think the best phone app out there, none of this psychobabble nonsense. It's called Dare, D-A-R-E. And it's a chap called Barry Madonna, an Irish guy. And, you know, there's stuff on there about stress, worry, sleep. And it's just really sound advice about, you know, what to kind of do to sort of help you to sort of calm down. You know, we all, I mean, I don't know enough about the website, Dan, to sort of know the types of guys that you're actually talking to every day. But I would imagine they're no different to me, really.
No, they're not. They're just, most of them are just normal blokes.
Yeah.
And that's it. And MANUP is very much awareness, where hopefully if someone's watching this and they'll go, bloody hell, that's me. Yeah. And hopefully they'll either speak to somebody, whoever's around them, or well, I'm not a massive fan of Dr. Google. I think there is that line, isn't there? But just educating.
Yeah, you've got to be really, really careful, because everything the dog is on there, you know, giving, you know, all the kind of stuff about, I mean, that's why anything that I sort of like send through to people, I know that there is a kind of an evidence base to it, but that but I would say that sometimes the simplest things are the best, you know, just learning a way to calm down that threat system when you go into that fight or flight. You know, it's just calming that all down. And it's not rocket science, you know, it's just switching, you know, just turning down the volume level. And one of the best ways to do that is just to alter your breathing, because, you know, that all the kind of physical manifestations come with, if you can just, you know, just calm everything down. I mean, I won't get into that too much, because you can watch it online. If you want me to, I mean, after this, I mean, I can send you a few things that are literally 10, 15 minutes long, that talk about, you know, some of the things that we've been chatting about, and you can put them on there and just see what people think.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this call then, because it's one of those where I could just keep going and going and going. I mean that in a nice and lovely way. And then if you can send me any of those links or whatever else, and let's see what we can come up with, because I think it'll be good a good education bit. Yeah,
that's great. I just send it on the Facebook thing.
Yeah, good stuff. Let me just hit on stop on here. Bear me 1 second.